I got a question for you. If you can have anybody to own Panama Canal and you only have two choices, China or
Blackrock.
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 Blackrock announcing it.
Who do you choose? BlackRock? You're okay with BlackRock owning Panama? Maybe it's better than China, but give me a break. Quietly, President's giving the speech.
To further enhance our national security, my administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal.
While he's giving a speech, he says a company is about to buy Panama Canal. We're like, what company is he talking about? Nobody knows. Reports come. BlackRock buys the two most important ports in Panama Canal, one on the Atlantic side, one on the Pacific side, for $22.8 billion. And guess who lost their mind? Xi. He is furious. How dare you, C.K. Hutchison, sell those two ports to a U.S. company? Do you realize how big of a national security this is? They are so irritated by this deal. But the founder and Xi have a history together. There's a lot to be talking about with Panama Canal. We're going to talk about that today. If value added this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. Headlines. BlackRock becomes a power player in the global shipping with help from Trump. Next one, Wall Street Journal. Again, China's Xi is angered by Panama port deal that Trump touted as a win. What the hell happened? BlackRock? Out of all the places, does BlackRock and President Trump have a history together? Back in 2017, you know what Trump said about Larry Fink? He says, look, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Larry did a great job for me. He managed a lot of money for me. And I have to tell you, he got me great returns. So there is history with Trump and BlackRock. But watch this. The deal happens 2 months after, in January, when BlackRock decides to leave the net zero deal. I don't know if you remember the whole net zero deal. We're going to raise $60 trillion for climate change. They're like, we'll add this one here. Then in February on 26th, they announced they're dropping DEI. And then they buy Panama Canal. You think maybe in the sequencing behind closed doors, somebody said, hey, if you drop net zero, because I'm not doing it, if you drop DEI, I will let you be the person to go buy Panama Canal. Maybe that was the deal that took place behind closed doors. Then they go and buy Panama Canal. Now, maybe behind closed doors, maybe a Scott Bessent, maybe a Marco Rubio, maybe a Trump. They were kind of walking him through how to negotiate. As a matter of fact, Wall Street Journal did a story on this. Here's what it says. In the days before finalizing the deal, Fink held calls with Trump's Secretary of State Rubio, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, ultimately garnering the administration's blessing, according to people close to the deal. So maybe they walked them through the deal. And by the way, it happened so fast. A $22.8 billion deal like this, by the way, there's two stories to it. One side, they're saying this was a overly paid Morningstar, advisor says they overpaid. This thing is only worth $10 billion. He paid $13 billion more than he should have really paid. This is all coming from the analyst from Morningstar named Dan Baker. Now, on the other side, when you look at the comps, when you sell ports or you buy ports, they typically sell and trade around 16 times EBITDA. The ports that they bought, the two ports, they have roughly a $1.7 billion EBITDA, around, let's just say net profits, EBITDA per year. They bought it at 13 times EBITDA, okay? 22.8, 22 point something. But it could have been bought for $27 billion if you make the comp on what it really saves for. So they probably saved $5 billion if you actually use the comps of what other ports trade for. So now let's take a look at what's in the deal. By the way, they didn't just buy two ports. This deal, the $22.8 billion, is 43 ports in 23 countries, including Mexico, Netherlands, Egypt, Australia, and Pakistan. All right, so if you look at this here, you'll notice they bought Cristobal Port, which is in the Atlantic, and they bought Port of Balboa, which is more on the Pacific. So you have to go through them. If you're trying to move anything from Atlantic to the Pacific or vice versa, you have to go through the two ports that now BlackRock owns 90% of. Let me tell you why this is so important. Everybody's worried about tariffs, right? And what controls and things that could happen with prices going up. Do you know in 2020 when China decides to come out, BBC reports on this, on what China is capable of doing during times of conflict? Let me read it to you. Chinese national security law introduced in 2020 could allow China to exercise influence over Hong Kong-based companies in the event of a conflict. Here's why that's important. C.K. Hutchison has owned the two ports since 1997 and they're a Hong Kong-based company. So guess what? We're worried about remember during COVID, prices were going up because we couldn't get certain supplies from China and they had a chokehold on America. Do you remember those days? Watch this. That happens. If all of a sudden we put too much tariffs on China, China can come out and say, hey guys, the port, guess what? Stop. We are China, communist regime. I can take control of a company in China. CK Hutchison, you own those two companies. Officially, I'm doing it. Remember when Jack Ma disappeared out of nowhere? They can make anybody disappear. So this is why you hear stories like Ted Cruz saying that China owns bridges in the area that could give the ability to block the canal without warning. So that was Ted Cruz. Now you look at Marco Rubio, U.S. Secretary of State. He comes out and pressured Panama to reduce Chinese influence or face retaliation. And Panama subsequently quit China's Belt and Road Initiative, angering Beijing. This is a very, very important deal. If you're worried about the tariffs that Trump is doing, if these guys had a chokehold on Panama Canal, you really want to know what could have happened? It could have been very ugly for America. Now, here's a chart that's very important. I want you to look at this here. China has quietly been investing into Panama Canal. Watch what happened to us right after Biden became president in 2020 with investment to Panama Canal. Does it look like we had a priority into investing there? Maybe you may say COVID wasn't a priority. All of a sudden, new administration comes and says, hey, we don't want nothing about COVID. You ain't going to control Panama Canal. We want that back. Just to give you some data what it means, how many container ships go through every year through Panama Canal? You ready? Not 1 million, not 10 million, 40 million. And 70% of the canal's traffic is linked to who? U.S. trade. This was a very important insurance policy for us to protect because you know who's the second largest that gets things to move through Panama Canal? China. So now, Chinese government, imagine you're Xi. News comes out. Wait. What are you selling? What are you talking about? What did they just sell? 43 ports. What is in those 43 ports? Are the 2 ports in Panama there? Yes, they are. Who the hell approved this sale? Are you kidding me? Imagine the calls behind closed doors. What makes you think you can sell this? Who the hell do you think you are? In their own language, I don't speak the language. Watch this here. Chinese government has sharply criticized CK Hutchison's deal to sell its Panama Canal ports and 40 other ports to Blackrock and its investment partners. Beijing previously dismissed Trump's concerns over Chinese influence in the canal, but has now shifted its stance. What happened? I thought China wasn't too concerned about it. You all of a sudden are because they bought it from you. Are you kidding me? By the way, if you're playing Monopoly and imagine you have the resources to sell it to somebody else on your side, not to the guy that has a lot of properties, you would much rather sell it to somebody that has no money. Keep it within China. They could have sold it to somebody else in China. They could have raised the money. You sell it to the enemy, especially the 2 most important pieces. You sold it to the enemy? We did, sir. Yes, we did. We sold it. Let me continue. This is their official response. Tao Kung Pao, a Hong Kong newspaper closely tied to the Communist Party, called the deal a threat to China's trade interests. Hello, U.S. officially has leverage. Number 2, the commentary warned that the U.S. could use the acquisition to politically pressure China and control its trade routes. China, did you forget what you did to the world during COVID? Because we did not. Next, Chinese internet users criticized the transaction as profit-seeking and unrighteous and a betrayal of Chinese interests. I don't disagree. CK Hutchison should have never sold. Never sold if they love China. However, there's conflict between the owner of CK Hutchison and Xi. Let me read this to you. CK Hutchison is controlled by Hong Kong billionaire Li Ka-shing, once seen as one of China's most successful businessmen, strained ties with Xi Jinping. Why? It goes all the way back to the 90s. Well, let me kind of tell you what happened. He sold off Chinese real estate before the 2021 housing crash, drawing nationalist criticism. Xi was not happy about that. He showed sympathy for Hong Kong democracy protests in 2019, angering Beijing, angering Xi. Xi personally, back in the 90s, blocked a Li-led real estate project in Fuzhou during the 90s. This guy didn't forget. So he's sitting there saying, listen, you can say whatever you want to me. I'm selling this thing. Watch what's going to happen to the owner. That's my biggest concern. Is this guy going to make it? Is this guy going to get arrested? Is this guy going to be leaving China? Who the hell knows what's going to happen there? But the reality of it is a U.S. company named Blackrock, out of all the companies, that's why I ask you, would you rather have China own it or Blackrock own it, now owns those 2 ports That's wild. Now, here's the thing. I don't think they're going to let it go this easily because in the past, they've been able to seize assets and do certain things to prevent the deal from happening. I think it's done, but I do know in 2021, Beijing stopped Blackstone, Schwartzman, different company, instead of Fink, from acquiring Soho China for $3 billion. It remains unclear if China will take action to disrupt this CK Hutchison deal. So if you're American, go like this. If you're anybody around the world that's pro-America, go like this. If you're in Iran, maybe you wanted to go to China. So now we're going to see. I think this is going to continue. So watch. Militarily, the U.S. has to sit there and say, well, do we send some military personnel there? I think as of right now, we have around 200 special forces folks in Panama. 200, give or take. But Pete Hegseth, is reviewing plans and is expected to visit Panama next month. We currently have, like I said, around 200 personnel, including special forces units. Potential actions could include ensuring U.S. ships maintain safe passage, expanding U.S. military presence near the canal, securing the operating ports in Panama, and reestablishing U.S. Army jungle schools for training. So Brandon asked me a very good question, saying, Pat, how do you feel about this whole thing with Blackrock, owning Panama Canal? Are you a little bit more optimistic about it? I said, look, short term, it's great. Long term, who the hell is going to be running Blackrock one day? Imagine the Blackrock CEO brokers a deal to sell it to somebody else. Then what do we do? I don't know. Larry Fink is there right now because Trump can control him and have some influence over him because of whatever leverages. He's a phenomenal negotiator. But what if another Biden comes in? What if another Kamala comes in? What if a Newsom comes in? What if somebody else comes in? You think they're going to have the same abilities to negotiate? I don't know. I'm hopeful short term. Long term, extremely paranoid that BlackRock has that. Because if the wrong CEO comes in, they could do something. Now, here's the only saving grace of what could happen. The reason why this could be okay is, say if BlackRock decides to get out of line and act a fool and do a deal that's going to hurt America. America has the ability to try to seize that from happening in many creative ways. Only and only if a president is running the country at the time that is not for sale. But if a president that's running the country that's for sale, China, they think long term. They will sit there and say, don't worry. Go get as much blackmail, get as much dirt on whoever's going to be the next president. We will embarrass the hell out of them to sign the deal for Panama Canal to be sold back to us in China. Till that day, we have those two pieces. Those are not pieces we want to give up to anybody else as long as possible. So, I asked the question at the beginning, how do you feel now? Would you rather have Panama Canal be owned by China or BlackRock? If you got value out of this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed this video and you want to know the history of Panama Canal, what it took to build it, click here to watch it. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye, bye-bye.